Tonight, I'd like to actually start by telling you a love story. It starts with two farm kids just over the border from each other in Illinois and Indiana who decided to get married despite their families thinking they were too young and that nothing good would come out of their marriage. With a belief in each other, combined with joining the U.S. Air Force, the trajectory of their lives was forever altered. They were last stationed in Germany, and he was running a repair facility. So when their service was over and he accepted a job working as a technician on the south side of Chicago for the John Deere dealer. He worked up in the organization, but they always dreamed of having their own business. So when the territory on the west side of Chicago became available, they risked everything they had or could borrow and started Westside Tractor with $10,000. Now the love story I'm telling you is my parents' story, but in a bigger picture, it's the story of someone who can start as a technician in the back and 56 years later end up with a company that supports 3 generations of our family, covering 10 locations across Illinois and Indiana. This isn't just my family story, it's really the story of the American dream. And part of being able to achieve the American dream starts in Washington, D.C. I'm worried that the America that allowed my parents to start and grow a company back in the 60s, and the America that allowed myself and my 2 brothers to grow our business by 10 times since we took over in the 80s, does not exist as much as it did for the next generation of my family coming into the business. AED's political efforts are a very important piece in the value that AED gives each of us as members. We've always had a strong program, but we got even better in 2017 by taking our Washington government affairs in-house and contracting for lobbying efforts in Ottawa. You know, we have much to do in 2018, not only to work towards a long-term and funded infrastructure program, but to understand all of the implications of the new tax plan. The staff of AED does a great job being our voice, but the power of our message comes from all of you. And I really encourage all of you to get involved in government affairs, whether that's a congressional visit, attending our Washington or Ottawa conferences, writing letters as directed, or giving a PAC check to AED. AED staff makes it really easy to be knowledgeable and involved. And I know we've talked a little bit about the success we had in getting some things changed with the new tax plan, but we really can make a difference. You know, one of the things that I love best about AED is that we take a partnership relationship between dealers and suppliers, working together to move our industry. Although consolidation has changed much about our industry, it's changed AED as well, including the value and content of our programs. When I first started in the late 80s, there were about 150 John Deere dealerships. I remember a Deere meeting where a Deere executive said, look at the dealer on your left, then look at the dealer on your right, and one of them will be gone in the next 3 years. It took a little longer than 3 years, but both my left and right were gone, and most of us in the middle too, because there's only 34 of us today. You know, my family's success has always been dependent on having the right partners, from some of the banks that are sponsors tonight, to a host of manufacturers, but first and foremost to John Deere. You know, us dealers, we don't like to compliment our mainline manufacturers very much, but I'm gonna go out of the box tonight and just say thank you to John Deere. We grew with them from a couple models back when my father started to where they are today. We wouldn't have grown without that important partner in our relationship. So I'm very equally proud of being the first John Deere dealer to chair AED, as I am to be the first female chair of AED. You know, I find it kind of comical that I'm your first female chair, because I never intended to break down barriers or glass ceilings or anything like that. I was really a girl who waited at the end of the street on my Schwinn banana bike for my dad to come home at night, which I waited and waited and waited because he put in a lot of irregular hours, and it was the 70s. So that wasn't the smartest move. But in time, I realized that I had an overwhelming drive to be part of the family business, which just happened to involve construction equipment and just happened to be almost entirely male. I just saw those as little minor obstacles I could get past. I worked my entire career to be noticed and respected for what I did and achieved, not for my gender. And frankly, even within my own family, I had to plead my case sometimes. If you would have told my father 30 years ago that his daughter would one day chair AED, he would have said you were crazy and laughed you out of the room. Now, my father, as well as the rest of my family, learned to see the power of diversity and acknowledge the skills of each individual that was not based on age or gender. And sometimes we get unexpected gifts in life, and on my journey to be perceived as competent as any men of the room has been the reward of setting an example for the women that have and will follow behind me. There have been many times in my career where another dealer, principal, customer, or supplier will approach me, and I can see the wheels churning in his eyes. The conversation always starts with 4 simple words, and those words are, "I have a daughter." Now, what comes next can vary. Would you talk to her? I didn't really think about her being in the business until I met you. But the weight of the meaning behind "I have a daughter" truly knocks me off my feet, and I realize that I have to take seriously my place in breaking down barriers. Now, I promise not to go all Oprah Winfrey on you, okay? But I would like to take a moment to talk about the business case behind why our industry needs to become more diverse and how AED can help us in that. So in 2014, there were 75 million baby boomers in the workforce. Some of those have already retired, and in a little over the next 10 years, they will retire or seriously scale back. And in's gonna march the millennials. Now, millennials are talented, they're educated, they have the highest self-confidence of any generation ever recorded, but they're also the everyone gets a trophy generation. Recently, I heard a description that resonated with me, and that the difference between baby boomers and millennials is that baby boomers' competence exceeds their confidence by 5 years. It's reversed in millennials. Their confidence is 5 years greater than their skills. So what do millennials expect from us as employers? Well, first of all, they expect diversity, and they won't tolerate anything less than a workforce that is diverse in sex and race. I have a wonderful 24-year-old millennial daughter over here, and I cannot imagine telling her that she shouldn't apply for a job because only men do that job, as I'm sure you can't imagine telling your own daughters that. I have a 13-year-old very white nephew in New York who was going to apply to a private school, and he said, "I can't, there's just too many white kids there." They also expect career paths and lots of training, especially leadership and other soft skills training. We're going to need to make up that gap between confidence and competence. And as an industry, we still spend most of our time on product training, and product training is really important, but when was the last time you fired someone because they didn't know enough about the product? It's usually the lack of management, leadership, customer service, or sales skills that get them way before product knowledge. Millennials will simply job hop if they don't get what they want, and they focus more on the culture of an organization than they do their paycheck. So either we need to invest more in our people as we move into the future, or we're going to be stuck with constant turnover or fighting with each other for the few millennials that have low self-esteem. I believe AED should be the nexus of providing powerful industry-specific training, especially for the soft skills that we don't get from our manufacturers. In the last few years, we've revamped our leadership courses, added executive development courses, and put far greater emphasis on meeting small dealer needs as well as other things. But the Center for Exciting Training should still be here at the annual summit. We need your feedback of the training that you're lacking to attract the best and brightest to our industry. The skills gap and lack of technicians that the AED Foundation so skillfully tries to address, I think we'll see in many other areas in our dealerships if we don't adjust to the requirements of the new workforce that is coming into our businesses. So as I wrap up, I want to thank a few people. First of all, I have a whole table of family over here, and thank you to them. When family businesses work, and I'm proud to say that ours works really well, you get to spend your day with those that you love and trust the most in this world. I'd especially like to thank my husband, who has to put up with a lot of things. He might have looked a little awkward on stage this morning, but he's truly my biggest fan. He's had to put up with things like going to me with conventions, and while I'm at meetings, my sister-in-laws drag him to spouse programs with titles such as Simple Holiday Parties or Shopping in Scottsdale. Mostly, though, I'd like to thank Brian McGuire and the wonderful staff of AED. They do really all the work. And thank you to all of those of you who get involved in making our industry stronger, from my fellow board members to those of you who are involved in various AD programs and political efforts. So as far as the rest of the love story that I started with tonight, they're not able enough to come to Las Vegas, but they just celebrated their 66th wedding anniversary. And right before, right before Thanksgiving, my family and I had the honor of giving $1 million of their personal estate away to our employees, from yard guy to senior manager, split up by years of service. This was my parents' way of saying thank you to all of our people who are part of our American success story. On behalf of my family, we are very proud to be part of this industry, and I personally am very proud of chairing such a great organization as AED. Thank you. Thank you so much. My husband said, "There's no crying, Diane," but that might have blown it. Thank you. Now I'd like to move on with our program tonight and introduce Tom Meredith, DLL's Chief Commercial Officer and Executive Board Member.
Thank you, Diane. What a great story. I'd also like to thank AED for inviting DLL back to sponsor tonight's event. Last year, we had the pleasure of hearing from our